I don't know how to describe it other than like a demon type of sound.
But it's silhouetted, hulking, every bit of 5.5 feet wide, 13 to 14 foot tall, pitch black.
The one thing that ran through my mind when I had this encounter was I don't have a big enough gun.
Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Before we get started, we have a couple of announcements. I want to mention once again, and we're going to bring this up each time we post a show. First of all, if you have questions for Mr. Black, send those to us, and Tom will give you that info here in just a moment. But as I've said last couple of shows, at least, we're working on a project, has nothing to do with books or this podcast or anything like that. But we're interested in talking to family members who've had a person disappear under strange circumstances, and you think it might be some unknown wildlife that was responsible. So we'd appreciate you contacting us. You'd be willing to talk to us. And it's a private conversation. It's not something that's going to be posted anywhere or made public. So, Tom, would you like to go ahead and have a few words?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to thank everybody for your questions. They're excellent questions. And they not only do they keep the topic alive, but they keep us going because it's stuff that we haven't thought of. And we have a lot of really good questions for Mr. Black. So if you got a question for Mr. Black, send that to questions@creekdevil.com. And if you would, take a moment and shoot another question to questions@creekdevil.com just for the show, for everybody in the audience out there. And so we really appreciate that. Also, if you like the show, let us know. If we've earned your click like and subscribe. And if you want to support the show, you can do that for as little as $1 a month. And there's a link in the YouTube description to Patreon. And with that said, I think we're ready to go.
Yeah, I was going to mention too, I chatted with Mr. Black yesterday. And I already sent him a bunch of questions. He loves the questions. We're going to be recording with him shortly. I don't know exactly what day. We haven't chosen a day yet, but here pretty soon. This week, I believe. So, along with what we have already recorded, we're going to be recording, I know, at least 3 other sessions. So there's going to be quite a bit of information. And I know some listeners have thought that, well, there isn't much yet. Well, he's just beginning. In this whole time we talked with him in this first recording session, he wanted to give a foundation for how they got involved in all this, and he unfolds more information as we go along. And these new recording sessions we're going to be doing with him are on some very specific topics too, so there'll be a lot more information coming. So having said that, patience, please listen to what he has to say. Okay, let's go ahead and start the Q&A. Tom, what do we have for questions?
Okay, so question number 1, this comes from Amanda, and this is one I'm going to shoot towards for us because she knows quite a bit about the macaques. And I think Amanda was looking at videos, or she has some knowledge about this, but people who have them as pets, I believe, and they wash them. And I think the question is, do macaques have a kind of an odor, or do they exude an odor, and how could that possibly relate to our topic, gorillas, chimps, and then the big guy, Bigfoot?
Okay.
Forrest, you're on the hot seat.
I'm on the hot seat. I know exactly what she's talking about, because if you watch any of these pet macaque movie videos out there, they incessantly bathe these babies. And I always thought that was kind of peculiar myself, because I had a friend that had a macaque, and she even had it into her adult years. Now, the only time I ever saw her bathe that macaque, I mean, she might have bathed it weekly, I don't know, but these people bathe them like, it seems like every 15 freaking minutes on these videos. And a lot of that could be done for the shows too, so that may be what she's speaking about. But anyway, my friend, I know that she bathed her at least once a week, but she kept diapers on her all the time. You have to. they're not potty trainable. So you have to keep diapers on them. And the only time I ever saw her kind of take the macaque to the bathroom and get it in the shower or something was to wash off the, excess poop on the rear end. So anyway, all that aside, I never thought that macaques had a peculiar smell. They just smell like macaques. I didn't find them offensive at all. And anyway, I saw something myself here, a week or so ago, actually in one of the comments that somebody, because there is one group that I actually do like to follow on there, and that she said that macaques stink. And I was like, well, I don't think macaques stink. I mean, all animals have a certain smell. My horses have a certain smell. My cats have a certain smell. I'm sure to them, we have a certain smell. Well, anyway, I pull out one of my primate books, and I'm like thinking, because I don't have any macaques handy to go take a sniff of. So I'm like thinking, okay, well, I'm going to look this up and see, do macaques really have an offensive smell? And guess what? They don't. But while I'm thumbing through there, I started reading some other stuff, because now I have been around gorillas and I have been around chimpanzees, my non-favorite other primate. They do have BO, and it smells a lot like human BO. But I did find something that you gentlemen may find quite interesting. The silverback gorillas have an ability to turn on a stench at certain times, and other times to completely turn it off. And primatologists, anthropologists, zoologists do not know how they do it. So I thought, how interesting. And I was like, okay, I'm going to read some more. And I read it in a couple of my different primate books here that gorillas have this ability to do this. And how many times do we hear that, you can be around Bigfoot and never smell anything, and then other times you smell this overpowering stench. So I thought, how interesting. And it's just the silverback male gorillas that can do this.
Well, Forrest, that brings up another question. That's interesting. They don't know how they do it. Do they know why they do it?
Well, it seems like when they're agitated and they're angry, that's when the males do this. And I don't know whether it's a large release of possible. That's what I was thinking. Maybe it was a large release of testosterone in the body or adrenaline or something that causes this. I don't know. Obviously, people that are around them all the time would be have the ability to study this, but it seems that they do it mostly when they're agitated and angry. Okay, and that kind of that's what we get with our. Well, I just thought how interesting that fits in with Bigfoot. Oh, and all the time, I did not know this. Well, and when you do smell it, I'm telling you, I've never smelled a silverback, but with Sasquatch, it's unmistakable, and it really grabs your attention. Will, you had that experience?
Oh yeah, it's a very unpleasant experience.
Yeah, it knocks you for a loop. Absolutely.
I have a question here from a listener. Let me, and it's going to be, I guess, directed to you, Forrest. Why are discoveries of animals such as the billy ape and other new primates being promoted and shared among the world, while evidence supporting the existence of Bigfoot is covered up or ignored by scientists? Why is one officially recognized and the other ignored? Well, now, that is a very good question. Because I don't know the answer to that. And I doubt very seriously, I can guess at it. Most of your large apes that are recognized are in Africa. Most of those areas in Africa have already been designated as national
sanctuaries, and they've already been set aside. So I don't know. I may be way off on this, but it may be that Bigfoot, if he was recognized as a ape, and they needed to set aside. Look at all these Bigfoot is even larger than chimpanzees, larger than gorillas, and they obviously have a much larger area that they traverse to feed and such. Can you imagine what that would encompass as far as, I don't know.
You know what I think?
It's not like, it's not like you can go tell a Bigfoot that he can only stay in Oregon. He can't roam up to Canada, and he can't roam into California or Washington, or you see where I'm going with this?
Right.
Most of those primate sanctuaries over in Africa, those animals pretty much stay in the same area all the time. I mean, they move around with the things that
their ranges are smaller
when it comes to the sea. Yeah, their ranges are just so much smaller than what it would take to, take care of a Bigfoot.
Here's the thought, and this might be part of the reason, and I think it has to do with expectations. I think for decades, because of National Geographic and all these, TV shows, we expect things like this to be in certain parts of the world and not others. We like to think, because we're constantly told we're, the leading superpower in the world and all this technology and blah, blah, blah. I think a lot of people find it incredulous to think that something like this could be right here in our own backyards. That should be over in Africa or South America or maybe Siberia, some, exotic remote location. With the other exotic wildlife. And it's just too hard for a lot of people, I think, to come to grips with the fact it could be right here in our own backyard.
Well, I think you're correct, and I think, too, that people tend to think that most of the world has been explored, and I think you'll find that there's areas even in Africa and Asia and, oh my gosh, probably even in Europe, and we know as well in Canada, Alaska, and the United States, the lower 48 even, that there are plenty of places here that haven't been explored. And I just, I think man has gotten to the point that we seem to think that we have discovered everything, and in fact, we have not. We make new discoveries of mammals and even primates, monthly.
Well, what about this thought? If it became publicly acknowledged, okay, and now you're going to have hordes of people going out looking for these things, and as we know, they are not friendly.
But there's already,
so it could be a public safety thing.
There's already hordes of people out looking for them, and they don't find them.
Right? Yeah,
there's people. There's people who claim they do, but I'm not buying it.
Well, there's some people that I follow on Facebook just for laughs and giggles. My gosh, they're buying every bush and every tree, according to them.
Oh, but, yeah, you've probably seen the same ones I've seen on Facebook. Every single, there's one, and I won't say who it is. There's one that posts pictures, I think, daily, and makes a big fuss about it. And there isn't a bloody thing in any of those pictures. Nothing.
Oh yeah. The guy with the pareidolia.
Well, that's lots of them. Now, I do know some good people out there who do find things and, do good work. But man, there's sure a lot of them that it's fanciful thinking.
All right. Well, we gotta.
Yep. Let's move on.
Are we ready for another question?
We're ready.
All right. Okay, so this person wants to know, David wants to know, he says, in Creek Devil, episode 17, I noted that your cover picture shows two Sasquatch with long flowing hair like humans. So I'm wondering, does Sasquatch have long hair like humans? That is, it keeps growing and growing long on the head, Is it in some types but not in others? I've never seen this in apes. Do apes have any long head hair? Which I think is a very good question. So gorillas and chimps, the hair length is he's saying it's kind of even, it's uniform throughout the body, and they don't have a mane like humans or horses. So,
Well,
I don't know.
with the
Looking for a
different
comment
with
here.
the different variations of Sasquatch, reports would certainly indicate that. For instance, we look at the Patterson Sasquatch and the ones that I've seen, which look just like that one, except they were, a little bit larger. The hair was a uniform length. But while other people report that sometimes they have long hair on the heads and long hair that hangs off their arms. If they pull their arm out, reach your arm out to do something, and they see this long hair hanging off. So we get those reports. So I'm sure there is some variations variance among the different types. Forrest, what do you think?
Well, I think you're exactly correct. I mean, your orangutans have a slightly longer hair. It is uniform pretty much all over the body, but they do have hair that hangs off longer off their arms. And gorillas and chimpanzees do not have that. Your gibbons don't either. There are some monkeys out there that have some, I mean, let's face it, some peculiar, some that look like, Teddy Roosevelt faces, and with the mustaches and all that sort of stuff. And then, your marmosets and stuff have these cute little, I don't know what you would call them, mustaches, and there's a lot of them that have unique hair on them. Your macaques do get a slightly longer hair in the upper portions of their body, but they never get anything what you would call a long flowing mane. The hindquarters and such, the hair seems to be a little closer to the body, and then that up in the forequarters and up to the head is just a slightly different, longer, and it looks kind of fluffy. And your Japanese macaques, well, you'll see that too, and they have fluffy tails. Well, there's all variations in the hair colors and hair lengths, but I don't know of any of them that have flowing manes. And but you do hear that sometimes with people say with Bigfoot that they saw long flowing hair off the top, and they even talk about them with having long flowing beards. So and I've seen some monkeys that have hair that looks like beards on them before too. So I think I'm right there with you that the different variations are going to have exhibit different types of hair arrangement on their body.
Yeah, and I would think if there's even a slight species differentiation, then there could be a whole range of differences with each grouping.
Oh yeah.
All right, Tom, what do we got next?
We do. And actually, we've got a little bit of an update. This is people that, Kurt and Laura, we've had them on the show a couple times. And Kurt texted me 11 o'clock last night. He said Sunday, him and Lori were driving around some of the back roads. And I know the area. And actually, it's an area, Will, that you and I went to in July, near where the Black Angus remains were found. But they were driving along. They were moving, and something ran up and slapped the canopy on their truck real loud 3 times. And I said, I think this is behavior that has been reported, something similar to that. And I was thinking about kind of a similar incident with you and the car where you were trying to get out of there and the car's not moving.
Right.
So I just wanted to get your comment on something, and it was 2 in the afternoon, broad daylight. I want to get your thoughts on that.
On the behavior, you mean?
Yeah, and have we, I guess specifically, have we heard other reports where people have had their car attacked, for lack of a better word?
Lots of them. Well, I interviewed, it was years ago, a gentleman in, and I hope I got this right. I want to say it was Georgia. It was somewhere in the south like that, either Georgia or Alabama. And it wasn't the only. I mean, I've interviewed plenty of people who've said the same kinds of thing where, they were driving through an area and one of the creatures actually ran right next to the cab of the truck, for some distance, looking in almost like it was checking him out or whatever. There was a story from a friend named Corey who his uncle was a deputy sheriff, and I can't remember, I think this was in the 1960s he said this happened. But he had his uncle had his wife and kids. They had one of the campers that sit on the back of a pickup, and they went up camping, and one morning, and there was more to the story, but one morning they were all in the camper, I think, having breakfast, and one of the creatures actually tore the door off the camper. It was standing there looking at him for a few moments.
Well, that would catch your undivided attention.
Yeah, that classifies as the proverbial underwear changing moment for certain.
Right? So
that's when I've been throwing the bacon out the front door.
Right.
Run, catch it, fetch.
Well, and Will, the encounter that I was thinking of was where you and some gal that you knew at the time, you were trying to leave. I think you had a Ford Capri.
Oh, that was a buddy of mine. Yeah, we were up. He and I were up doing some research, field work in an area, and it wasn't that far from where the Clark Ranch was, in fact. And we'd heard some vocals that were close, and I was trying to get in a place, because you're limited by where the roads are, in an area, so you kind of have to do the best you can to maneuver with what you have, getting closer to where the vocals were going. But we were trying to see if we could actually see the creatures. It was night, and I ended up backing in by this tree, and we sat there for a while and listened, didn't hear anything more, and we'd heard quite a few vocals. We had the windows down, and so we figured the creatures had left. Maybe the car lights or whatever disturbed them. And when I went to leave, it was a 4-speed, a standard shift, and I went to shift it in second gear to go, and it wouldn't move. And I'm like, what the heck, is the transmission out or whatever? Then I dropped it in first gear. I thought, well, let me see, maybe there's a mechanical issue. And I could hear the tires grinding in the gravel, and then it was like a cork being let go, and I'm like, what the hell was that? So the next day we got back to his place, and I went outside and looked, and from driving around those areas, your car gets pretty dusty, and my car was dark brown, and on the back quarter panels on each side of the car were these markings like these big hands had grabbed the car and then let go of it.
You got to think about that. A couple things. Number one, that's big to be able to hold it, to get your arms around it like that. And then number two, the strength, the sheer force involved.
Just to hold the car. I mean, granted, I was at a dead stop and, trying to move. And so, I suppose for something that big, it wouldn't be too much effort. But yeah, that was interesting. Like I said, my mindset was there was a mechanical problem with the car, and it proved that it wasn't.
Well, didn't
one
something
other
like
thing.
What's that for?
Didn't something like that happen to Brenda? Well, didn't something like that happen to Brenda Harris as well?
I believe so.
One time?
Yeah, I think we were comparing notes the last time we talked about our experiences.
Well, the other thing that caught my attention was, they'd all gone. You thought, they've all disturbed them.
Yeah, we sat there and waited for quite a while listening, and there was just nothing. Apparently it seemed like they'd left.
And looking back, one of them at least
was right there,
sneaking up on your.
Was right there behind the car. Yeah.
Yeah, and no bourbon or cigars or anything.
No, nothing like that. It was pretty plain Jane situation.
Yeah. But that, the thing that gets me about that is so many times they are right there and you have no idea that they're there until something happens.
There was a story too, and I think we've mentioned it before. It's one of the more interesting stories from the Bluff Creek area before, this is a decade before Patterson got the film. And there was a lot that happened leading up to that for the whole decade. And there was some guy, and just the gist of the story was the guy went there to work. He was up in that area looking for, I guess, the boss, the crew boss. And, late at night, and apparently the guy wasn't up there with his crew, but this guy didn't know that. He drove into the area, and one of these creatures was menacing him. He drug a tree across the road behind him, and it was in front of him, and it would run, do a mock charge at the car, then it would stop, and then it would stalk off, and then it'd do that several times and circle the car, and the guy felt, rightly so, he felt his safety was in danger, so he eventually, I can't remember what the maneuver was, he got away from the creature and out of the area. And it affected him so strongly that he even kind of blacked the whole situation out for a time. And that's something we're going to be having somebody with a psychology background on the near future here will bring that up. But, and I've heard of situations like that occasionally too, where people will be so traumatized that they black out the situation.
That is interesting. And I've heard of it. I just, I guess trying to wrap my brain around that. How do you, when something like that, it seems to me that it'd just be the opposite. It would just like burn itself into your memory. But I guess if it's super traumatic, maybe that's maybe it's a safety mechanism.
I think that has, roots also in combat and with police officers, in really super stressful situations, where it's a coping mechanism.
Well, it makes me wonder what I've forgotten up there in the Cascades.
Okay, we got time for one more question, Tom.
Okay. The last question has to do with the coloration of the hair. We had a gentleman on probably about 3 years ago. He was in Oregon, and him and his friend, as kids, were up in the northern coast hills. I know the area. Actually, I think it was outside of Tillamook, and riding their bikes. And they saw one of these things in the morning, and it had to do with the coloration of the hair. They said the hair would kind of, he was trying to describe it, but it almost sounded like it was translucent or somewhat translucent, with a sort of a prismatic effect. And have we heard that before? We're just looking for a comment on that.
Well, some people, talk about that, but, I don't know. The creatures that I've seen 3 of them, and none of the 3 of them had hair like that at all. So, is there a variation that does? I have no idea. What do you think, Forrest?
Well, I don't know of any primate with translucent hair. And I think that it probably, the effects of light on any hair can cause varying degrees of shades of color. That's why you hear some of them say that they're like a copper penny, and other people say they're reddish brown, a chestnut color, a brown color, dark brown color, a black color. And I think, you can even take black and have an animal that's black sitting in the sun, and that just by the animal moving in the sunlight, it can give it reddish hues, or it can give it a blue-black hue. So I think it works the same way with Bigfoot, and I think, they come in all colors, because we've heard of them in all colors, blondes, even white ones.
Oh, yeah.
So, so I would think that the lighter colors are probably more recessive, and less likely to appear in Bigfoot, but you don't hear about it a whole lot, but you do hear that they do come up in those colors.
I wonder too, some of the other effects that could influence the situation like that. If somebody says they see something like that, I think it would depend on atmospheric conditions, even temperature, the time of year it is, time of day it is. How much, there's just a lot of things that could affect that.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you something here. This is from a personal experience. I told you about the one that walked across the road in Idaho with me up north of Coeur d'Alene. This was right at sunset. And my kids for a long time teased me about this. Because when they asked, I don't remember now which family member asked, well, what color was it? And I said, well, you want an honest to God truth, it looked almost purple. Now, as stupid as that may sound, the sun, I had a brilliant orange sunset behind this, and it was like silhouetted, and I think the creature was probably a dark brown or a black color, to be honest with you. But with the sun setting on it behind it, it almost gave it a purple hue. Now, as crazy as that may sound, that was, so for the longest in my family, people talked about my purple people eater that I had seen. And I was like, okay, it wasn't a purple people eater. It was a
good
big
description.
Well, it could have been, though.
It could have been. But, I never said that to you guys before because I thought, oh, my God, that sounds really crazy. But, the kids teased me about that for a long time. They don't tease me anymore because they know, it was serious. But, that setting sun behind that Bigfoot walking across the road gave it that kind of a purplish, here's this brilliant orange, pinky orange sunset right behind it. And I'm, coming up to it in a pickup, and it almost gave it a purplish hue. So I can see where, atmospheric effects and the sunlight are going to make, make colors look weird.
Well, and a good example are mirages. You drive, how many times have you driven down a road and what looks like pools of water in the road?
Oh, yeah.
And it's not. It's atmospheric conditions.
Exactly.
Alrighty. Well, with that, we'll leave it here. Send us your questions, folks. There's no such thing as a bad question or a dumb question. And there's lots of new people who listen to the show, so it's okay to ask the same question that we may have talked about before. Tom, Forrest, any final thoughts?
Questions at creekdevil.com. Send your questions. Yes, absolutely.
Forrest?
Enjoyed it as usual.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning, @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open out there.